When you're looking to purchase real estate as a buy and hold investment, it's important to know how to analyze the property in terms of income and expenses, so that you can properly determine the net cash flow that a property is likely to generate. The first step is to make sure that you're using a realistic estimate for the gross rental amount. We determine this by looking at what similar properties in the area have recently rented for. While this is a very similar process to pulling comps on a property for sale, rental comps are a little trickier because the majority of rental properties are not listed in the MLS. This means we also have to look in a variety of other places, such as major portals like Zillow, Trulia, HotPads, along with Craigslist and other places where people post properties for rent. Once we've come up with the gross potential rent, the next step is to subtract for the expected vacancy. Since we know that the property is not going to be occupied 100% of the time, we have to account for the average amount of time that we predict the property won't be generating income. For example, if the average tenant stays for 3 years, and then the property ends up being vacant for 1 month in between tenants, that would come out to a vacancy rate of just under 3%. But since I tend to be a little bit on the conservative side when it comes to running my numbers, I usually plug in a vacancy rate of about 5%. Next, it's time to account for property management. If you decide to hire us to manage your rental property, then you'll end up paying anywhere between $75 and $150 per month, just depending on which plan you go with. Most of our clients go with our Silver plan, which runs $100 per month. For more information about our various property management plans, you can visit bluefieldgroup.com/property management. Next, you need to account for repairs and maintenance. Part of being a landlord is fixing things when they break, along with paying for preventative maintenance from time to time to make sure that your property stays in good condition and performs well over the long term. If you purchase a relatively new home, it may be several years before you have to start spending money on repairs. And if you purchase an older home that hasn't been updated, it's likely you'll have to start spending money on repairs fairly soon. We've had good luck in the past, assuming that about 5% of the gross potential rent will end up being spent on repairs and maintenance over the long term. But keep in mind that this is not a level recurring cost. You may go years without a repair bill and then get hit with a big cost all at once. That's why it's so important to put a little bit away each month into an account designated only for repairs and maintenance. Another incredibly important category that many investors forget about is CapEx, or capital expenses. These are those big ticket items that we know will need to be replaced every so often once they've reached the end of their lifespan, such as the roof, HVAC system, water heater, and appliances. For example, the average roof with architectural shingles can be expected to last for about 30 years. If you don't put money aside each month for CapEx, then it could really put you in a bind when it comes time to replace an expensive component of your rental property. As a rule of thumb, I also recommend putting about 5% of the gross potential rent toward this category over the long term. However, this really depends on the size of the home more than the amount of the monthly rent. Last but not least, we have PITIA, which stands for Principal, Interest, Taxes, Insurance Association. This includes your mortgage payment, your escrows, and your HOA dues. All right, so now that we know all of the expenses to keep in mind, let's take a look at a quick example. Let's assume you're considering a property that would rent for $1,500 per month. If we subtract 5% for vacancy, $100 for property management, 5% for repairs, 5% for CapEx, and $1,000 for our PITIA, this leaves us with $175 per month as a good, conservative estimate of net cash flow after everything is said and done. Now keep in mind, monthly cash flow is just one of many ways that this property will be making you money. You'll also be gaining equity over time as your mortgage balance gets paid down and the property increases in value. And you'll also benefit from the depreciation that you can claim as a tax write-off. For a closer look at the various benefits that make real estate an ideal investment, you can go to bluefieldgroup.com/invest. If you have any questions at all about real estate investing, or if you're ready to jump in and buy your first deal, then call or email us today and we'll connect you with one of our top agents. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.